It is like the day before Christmas. The Six Nations is nearly upon us, and we've got a cracking fixture first up with France hosting Wales. Hello, amateurs, and welcome to our Six Nations series. And I've got another fantastic guest for you today. His name's Dan, but you may know him as the Rugby Merlin. Hello, Mr. Rugby Merlin. How are you today?
Great, thank you, Tim. Looking forward, to the match this weekend. I was excited to have a look at the teams today. It's a hell of a game for the Welsh boys to get started with, and it's exciting to see the French players, particularly the ones who are back. So, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Now, there's a little bit of doom and gloom, to be fair, around Welsh rugby at the moment. But how do you feel
a little bit
going into this tournament?
Obviously, I think the problems that the Welsh, not just the team, the national team, but the nation as a whole have had over the last year or so have been well documented. I think everyone is aware of them. And to be honest, I think a lot of supporters from other nations are kind of willing Wales to pull themselves out of it. I mean, they couldn't have a tougher start, really. But yeah, it's been hard going, and it's every team goes through it, but this one's been especially bad.
Yeah, it has. It's gone on for a little while now. So, yeah, I think you're dead right. Everybody wants Wales to come back and be competitive at the very least. And I think, well, I'm really hopeful they will be, So I'll tell you what, on that thought, let's go and look at the French team that they're going to have to take on, though, on Friday night in the opening game. It's a magical opening night of the Six Nations. And France, in spite of all their injuries, still look remarkably strong. So looking at the forwards first, who you're looking at here, Dan? Who are you picking out?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I thought there might be a little bit of a silver lining, not to wish injury on the French boys, but I thought there might be a couple of openings, and maybe there are, but it's still on paper a very strong 15 that they're putting out. Maybe a few youngsters on the bench, but we can look at that later. But the front, the eighth, the pack are very, very physically strong, and that's been something Wales have struggled with since Gatland's return, and players like Antonio and that back row. Who have you got? Paul Boudouin at 7. He's a beast. So a couple of those boys stand out just for their ball carrying ability. I think it's a very, very strong ball carrying pack. And, Wales are going to have to work their socks up front just to keep up with them, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. But I would say the opportunity maybe is in the line out, because they always have a big, heavy second row in Meafou in this case. But Rumar's played a lot in the back row. So maybe not as much experience in terms of actually calling the line out himself. However, the back rowers, they're all good at jumping as well. So it may or may not pan out that way.
Yeah, it's always kind of underestimated, I think, who takes control of the line out, who's calling it. And I would say normally, yes, that would be an opening. But a few Wales have their own issues there too. Adam Beard is out, and he's usually the main man in the line out. I was watching a podcast recently, and kind of Wales's win percentage for their own ball goes down to something like 70-something percent. So it drops 20% when he's not playing, because no one has really stepped up to kind of fill that role for Wales either. So what would normally I see as an opening is really something where Wales have been struggling as well. So it's going to be a tough ask. It always was going to be against a big French pack. And like I say, Ruma, what he lacks in kind of his second row workhorse abilities, he makes up for in his kind of dynamism and his ball carrying skills. As you said, he played a lot in the back row. So I think Gatti knows what he's doing there, and he's going to run the ball hard at the Welsh boys.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's look into the back division. And it doesn't get any more friendly here, to be honest, does it? I mean, Dupont and Untamak back together in the Six Nations again. BLBRE was a worry, but he's come through. I mean, the one bit of luck, I guess, is that Penno's not there as well, who was on ridiculously good form so far this season. But apparently, this young boy, Atasogbe from Pau, is a very good player too.
Yeah, lots of pace on the wings, incredible amount of pace for France, but that's what you come to expect. I'm looking forward to see BRE. He's a live wire as always, but you know the kind of the two players that I think everyone will be looking at reunited. Dupont and Antomac. I mean, it's so great. You know, even though they are playing against Wales, I'm so happy to see them back playing together for France. You know, I know they both are playing for Toulouse, but that's such a great sight to see. And Antomac, I'm sure, will feel his way into the game. You know, he's an intelligent player, and he won't push himself too hard, too fast. A few kicks to find his range, but hopefully we can see a little bit of magic, and I'm sure we will see a bit of magic from those two boys, because I can see, as we mentioned, them getting some fast ball for some hard carries, and that's what the 9 and 10 live off. So should be some exciting rugby, I think. Barassi in the 13 position, he's a bit of a surprise, I think. What do you think about his selection?
Well, you know what? I don't know too much about him. So I did some research, and he's been a regular in the Toulouse team now for quite a long time. He's 26, so he's not a youngster. So I'm really intrigued to watch him play. And to be honest, it's a name that almost feels new to me, which feels it's kind of strange. So yeah, that centre partnership, which is new for France. They've had Ficou and Dante there for so many years that I think this is a really interesting place to see how France develop.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen him for Toulouse quite a lot. I watched the champions last year with Toulouse, and he's playing well. Very clever player. Plays interplay with other players is very important, and I think with 9 and 10, those being Toulouse boys too, and his form, Barassi's played well so far for Toulouse. He was out, same as you. I did a little bit more research before looking at the teams, but he kind of got his cap and then was left out, and they've moved on to some other centers, grooming them to come through. But I think he's made his mark on Galtier, and it's great to see him at that stage in his career push his way back into the very competitive French side. So you don't often see players do that, and I'm very happy for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the bench. Great strength here at 16, 17, Marchand and Bay.
Yeah.
Plom is enormous and very good around the field, but he's inconsistent, I would say, at scrum time. They've gone for 2 second rows and a back rower on a 6-2 bench with Le Garrick and Gaeton filling in the 3 quarters there. Any thoughts from yourself, Dan, on this?
I know the forward substitutions, apart from the front row, those boys are pretty young. And, overall, I think Galtier is bringing through the youngsters brilliantly with a nice mix of experience and youth. I mean, this is the way to do it if you look at this French side. He's got the youngster, I think, who's only just come out of the under-20s on the wing, as you mentioned, Adesogo. He was playing in the under-20 Six Nations last year, but he's bringing him through, surrounded by these very experienced players. So these forwards will come on now and have 20 minutes. Le Garrick is a phenom, in my opinion. You never know what he's going to do. So it's going to be exciting when he comes on as well. So they have some firepower off the bench and players who are eager and confident, and that's what you want, particularly early on for France, who are kind of notorious for starting a little bit slow. So maybe the injection of youth on the bench will help them in that respect. Plus, the Welsh team will probably help them quite a bit too.
Okay, that is a lovely link to go on and have a look at the Welsh team. So here we go. Let's see what Gatland's picked in the forwards. So interestingly, two first starts here for Ewan Lloyd and Thomas in the front row away in Paris. That is a baptism of fire, isn't it?
It is. I was surprised he went with Thomas. I thought he might go with who's the other proppers on the bench?
Yeah,
that's right. I thought he might go with him because he's given him a lot of games recently. But we'll have to see how it goes. But baptism of fire, I mean, I hope they do well because Wales have really been struggling at scrum time, particularly tight head. Did you play prop, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a tough position, even with a lot of games under your belt. So, to go to France and then to be asked to go up against, one of the best front row scrummaging wise in the world, then, all you can do is wish him all the best and see how he goes. But it's going to be a long day for him. And Lloyd as well. I hope he goes well. Line out, as you said, is going to be key. Gareth Thomas, then, I think he's had a lot more experience than those boys. So hopefully he can secure his side of the scrum. But yeah, big ask.
Yeah, it is indeed. And the big name missing from the back row is Toby Faletau, who's picked up a knee injury in training this week. However, I thought Botham was probably Wales's best forward during the autumn internationals. So yeah, it's a loss. I'm sure Faletau would have been picked if he was available, but I think it's a very good replacement.
Yeah, I think Botham realised in the autumn internationals that he had to seize his opportunity, and I think he worked very hard to try and do that. And now that's all it takes is a little bit of a knock for one of the more experienced players. As you said, Gatland was probably going to go for this kind of cycle for Wales where he's just trying to get a win. And, he put his hand up in the autumn internationals and he's getting rewarded now. Very physical player, which I like and I think we need. He doesn't take a backward step from anybody. He's not afraid of anybody. And I think you need a bit of that dog, a bit of that grit and go forward. So with Morgan and Wainwright, this is Wales' probably strongest unit, I would say, on the pitch. So they're up against it. The French back row, very, very good. But if they can get stuck in, maybe we can match them and maybe get a little bit of an edge. We have to look for areas where we can get a little bit of an advantage. This might be one of them.
Yeah, certainly a very, very competitive and combative back row there for Wales. Okay, let's move on to the backs. And we've got Thomas Williams, who is playing fantastic rugby for Gloucester at the moment. And the big news, I guess, is that he's gone for Ben Thomas ahead of Dan Edwards at fly half. What do you make of that?
I was kind of hoping Dan Edwards would get a start. I'm more of an Ospreys fan than I am a Cardiff fan, although I support all the regions these days. They need it. But I mean, if you're going to go with, as Gatland always states, for the cameras at least anyway, he's trying to build for the future. So why not go for Dan? He's got a kind of unique temperament, I think. And I think one that would be suited to international rugby. So I believe he is on the bench though. So I'm really interested to see how he deals with international rugby. But then again, Thomas is a great footballer. He can play multiple positions. That's why I kind of thought that Gatland would put him on the bench because he can cover multiple positions. So I thought that maybe would be a better choice. And if Dan Edwards was having a nightmare, which I don't think he would have, but he could switch things up a little bit. But he's gone for Thomas, so he's a good player too. So we'll have to see how he goes. Yeah.
And then the rest of this back line, what I'm seeing here is experience, quite a lot of gnarliness, quite a lot of toughness as well, to be honest. And again, I think it's just reiterating what you just already said about the forwards. That's what Wales are really going to need to have in Paris on Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just trying to get as many caps on the pitch as he can, really, in the back line or wherever he can, really. And Watkin, Tompkins, they haven't played that many times together. I think only like 3 or 4 times, but they've had, around 50. Watkins, 42, Nick Tompkins, 38 caps. So almost getting towards 100 caps between them. So that's a lot of experience playing in the centre. Then you got Josh Adams, and Williams, who've played a lot. And then Rogers, who's not a bad player there on the wing. I do like him. He's got plenty of pace. Not sure he's as fast as the French boys, but, he's a dangerous runner. And we're going to need a bit of an edge going forward because Wales, I think it's well known, have struggled creating opportunities over this since the World Cup, really. And maybe Rogers can inject some well-needed pace because Adams and Williams, getting towards the tail end of their career, particularly Liam Williams. He's been around forever. So maybe they've lost half a yard of pace. So maybe Rogers can make up for that.
Yeah, possible. Okay, onto the bench. We have got Elliot Dee, Nicky Smith, and Kieran Azarati in the front row. Freddie Thomas, Tommy Raffel, and Teddy Williams. Is that Teddy Williams? No, Rodri Williams.
Yeah.
Excuse me, at 21. Rodri Williams at 21. Then Dan Edwards
Rodri.
and Blair
Scrum
Murray. Yeah. What are you looking from the bench? Who do you think can make a difference coming on?
Well, I think the front row boys have a big job to do. I can see them getting like 30 minutes. I mean, he's going to tell the starters to blow out the gas tank, and we'll bring the other boys on as soon as we need to. So I can see them having a big job to do, particularly if the scrum is going south. So even though they on the bench, they have a lot of work to do, I think, on Friday. Raffel, he had a great tournament, was it last year, the Six Nations? I think he was Wales Player of the tournament. Not sure how his season's going so far this year, but I hope he plays well. But a bit of experience there, as you said, with Rodri Williams. There's not a lot of firepower there, is there? I mean, I'd like to see Dan Edwards come on, compared to the French bench, I think the Wales bench is a little bit weaker in terms of what they can bring on to change the game. I think the only one that really does stand out to me is Dan Edwards, and he's 22 years old, so he's never played before. So,
I'm inclined to agree. Although I would say Nicky Smith against George Henry Colomb could be an interesting one, because Smith has been playing really well for Tigers. He's having a new lease of life there. And as I said earlier, Colomb is inconsistent as a scrummager. He sometimes gets it right, but he often gets it wrong as well. So, late in the game, if Wales can get a nudge in the scrum, if they've managed to stick in it for that long, that could be an interesting factor.
Yeah, why do you think he didn't start then, Nicky Smith? Because I was expecting him to be like a definite starter.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I've really rate Gareth Thomas as well. So I think they're both good players. And maybe they did think about this, that Smith would end up going against the weaker scrummager at the end, and that might make a difference. Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good call. But overall, I think the bench, France have the advantage, and Wales. But this is the thing: Wales seem to have a diminished pool of players to choose from at the moment, or at least Gatland is not dipping into the full pool of players that he can. So. I've done preview for the Six Nations, and that's the thing about France. They have such a huge pool of players to choose from. And I think that is always going to be an advantage they have over Wales. So Wales, we always have to do this really, is dig deep and, punch above our weight really. Coming into the Six Nations, I don't think anyone gives Wales a hope. Maybe of winning one game if we're lucky. And, we do have a tendency when our backs are really against the wall to dig deep and produce something. Now it's going to be a huge ask against this French side. We're missing a few of their top players, but still very, very strong. But, we're going to have to produce, or these players are going to have to produce their very best to compete with this French team. And I think that bench really does show it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so looking forward now to the game itself, what do we think we're going to see? What are the tactical choices that you think we're going to see from each team?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think Antomac is going to feel his way into the game by putting in some nice kicks. And so I think France are going to kick for territory quite a lot. Their wings have a lot of gas, so there's going to be a lot of kick and chase, keeping the ball in play, which France do very well. They're going to look to play down Wales' end and put them under extreme pressure with the big ball carriers up front, short angles off the breakdown. And they're going to try and make Wales work very hard in defence. Wales are going to have to weather the early storm that's going to take place playing France at home. And when they do get possession, don't waste it. That is the key point for Wales. No silly kicks, kicking away ball without a good chase. So a lot of the onus is on the 9 and the 10. So Wales probably going to be down in possession in the first 30 minutes quite a lot. But when they do get the opportunity, they're going to have to make the most of it. And that's how I see the first half going anyway.
Yeah, I think from Wales's perspective, I think tactically that they want to try and keep hold of the ball for long periods if they can.
Right.
Need to try and be patient and just not let France have the ball, because I think France will then potentially get a little bit frustrated and it will wear them out a bit as well. And even if they're not necessarily making yards or scoring points or whatever, I think possession could be a really key factor for Wales in this game, because you get confidence from that as well. You get confidence from having the ball and being able to look after it. So alongside that, I think Wales are going to have to field kicks really well. I think they're going to have to be really good at that, because otherwise, if you get France in broken field situations, then they're very difficult to handle. On the French side, I think exactly what you said. They're going to get those forwards going, and if they can get some offloads in and get in behind, then it gets very difficult, because Untamak is so good at reading when the right time is to get the ball from the forwards and then going and exploiting it. And he'll just sit there and wait. And then as soon as that moment comes, he's off and gone, and the players outside him know. So I agree. I think it's going to be a tough night for Wales, and I think they've got to get all of their detail right to be within a chance in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, and if we are, anything can happen. Wales have been written off, so but if they can stay in it, and I think that's the key point for the first 60 minutes is staying in the match. I'm not sure who's going to take the kicks. I guess Ben Thomas will be kicking. So if the French discipline, if they're a bit rusty, if Wales can work them in the maul and if Jack Morgan can try and jackal a few balls, get a few penalties, keep Wales in the match, and then you never know what will happen in the last 20. How do you feel the set piece is going to go? Line out scrum.
The line out, as we've sort of discussed earlier, I think it could be a complete lottery. I think it's all up for grabs, with neither of the hookers are the best throwers. There's line out jumpers, missing for France. I think line up could be, who knows. I think Wales are going to have to really dig in the scrum. I think France will be heavy favourites in the scrum early in the game. But as I mentioned earlier, that could switch later.
Yeah. So maybe Wales are going to look to keep the ball in play a little bit, and France too, and not go to the line out if they're not confident that they're going to win their own ball. I mean, they probably kicked a touch a couple of times, test it out. But France and Wales, France definitely are more than capable of keeping the ball in play for long periods. So we might see a bit of that in the first half, particularly France trying to weigh down the Welsh defence, which I think they'll do. I think Ntamack is, as you mentioned, very patient player and will wait for his opportunity. So a lot of defending from Wales. They're going to have to make their tackles, and they're going to have to, try to make dominant tackles too. But I'm hopeful. At this stage, all the talking is kind of done. The criticisms of Gatland, of which there are many, is players that were left out. Which some of them I was like Cam Winnett. I can't believe he's not in the side, in the squad even. But all that is done now, and I dusted off my Welsh shirt. So as we get closer and closer to the match, it's more right. Nothing else matters now. We got to cheer the boys on. So I'm sure everyone in Wales will feel the same. But it's a big ask, and we'll have to see how it goes. How do you feel? Gatland's kind of return to Wales has gone. What's your opinion of his coaching style?
Well, he's not helped himself, I don't think, by some of the things he said in the press, that like it was a bigger mess than he was expecting and stuff like that, I felt like he'd given a lot of young players some game time over the previous 12 months, who he's now sort of left out to dry, Cam Winnett being one of them. And Rio Dyer was one of Wales's best players, I thought, in the last 12 months. And I know he's not had a lot of ball this year for the Dragons or whatnot, but he's, again, seems strange. So you never know, really, unless you're in the camp, unless you're talking to these players. And it's very difficult to know. But there's some decisions that seem a little bit puzzling from the outside, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's Gatland's way. He doesn't feel he doesn't feel obligated to explain himself to anybody. And I think the Welsh public, just as puzzled as everyone else. I think we accepted the fact that he was bringing young players through, which is what everyone wants to see. We understood where we were in terms of having a kind of, I will say, golden generation of players retiring, and then bringing young players through. You have to do it, but then to discard them so quickly and chopping and changing the team constantly, I think he overplayed his hand in terms of using the "we are rebuilding" cliche well into how many. This is his third Six Nations now, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, back, and so as I said, we put that aside when game time comes, but a lot of frustration with his kind of unwillingness to really explain what his grander plan is, and we are just as puzzled by some of his selection choices as everyone else, really.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Rugby Merlin, let's wrap this one up with some predictions. What do you think? Give me a prediction of the final score.
All right, so I got my heart or my head. Let me think for a second. This is a tough question. So I think Wales will kind of put in a good performance. I do. I think we are in a situation now where we have to perform. I don't think there's any other choice. So players like Botham, I think Ben Thomas will have a good game, and I think Dan Edwards. I think these youngsters know no fear, and I think when they come on, they will do well, and they'll maybe make a name for themselves. But France ultimately will prove to be the stronger squad on the day. So I'm going to go for a France win. I think Wales will get a couple of tries. So I'm going to say it'll be roughly 40 points to 20. Well, I think that will be a respectable score in France.
You know what? I broadly agree with just about everything you've said there. I definitely do think Wales will get some tries. France's defence has been a little bit leaky of late, and Wales have always had the opportunity, the ability rather, to just create something from nothing. And we've seen that over the past 12 months, even though they've been struggling. Right. I also think it's going to be 40-something. I'm going to go 42-19.
All right, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
All right. We're both predicting a France win. So I don't think we'd make any money on that if we put it down. But how about France's chances for the tournament as a whole? I mean, do you think they're strong enough?
I think they start as favourites, but there's always the thing, isn't there? You never quite know how they're going to perform in a tournament. I was speaking to my French friend yesterday, Jerome, and he was saying, there's a bit of disharmony in terms of the way the French players play in their club rugby and the way they're being asked to play in international rugby. And, it only takes one little thing to click and go wrong, and suddenly you can lose a whole squad of players emotionally. So, this is always the enigma with the French, isn't it? Which is old ground that everybody already knows. You never quite know. They're definitely the favourites as far as I'm concerned, but they could implode.
Yeah, but they do they couldn't ask Wales, probably everyone's saying the weaker side in the Six Nations. So they certainly have a good opportunity to get a good start under their belt. So maybe they can build from there. Wales have the most difficult start probably they could ask for. So, I mean, if we put in a good performance, maybe it'll work for us too. We can get the ball rolling a little bit, even if it's a respectable loss. I think it wouldn't be too bad for the Welsh Spirits, because the players, I think, are very demoralized now. So I think more than anything, they need a little bit of self-belief and self-confidence. So, going over to France against such a talented side is a good way to build up your confidence, especially for these young players. I think if they can do well against some of the best players in the world, they'll serve them in good stead for the rest of the tournament. So I'm going to say Wales for the Grand Slam.
Okay, people at home, that is what we think. But what do you think? Have we got this right? Are there any players that we haven't mentioned that you think might play a key role? Anything tactically or technically that you think would be a real big factor in this game on Friday night. Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll join you there for a conversation. Give the video a thumbs up while you're down there. It helps other people find it. It just leaves me to say, Mr. Rugby Merlin, thank you so much for your time today. And if people want to hear more from you, where can they do that?
My YouTube channel. That's where I post videos covering the Six Nations now. Rugby Merlin. Pretty easy to find. And looking forward to the Lions too, because this Six Nations tournament, of course, all feeds into the Lions. I'm sure Farrell will be at all the games that he can. You'll see him in the crowd watching. And part of the most interesting thing about this tournament is just watching the individual performances and seeing who puts their hand up for the Lions selection. So it's going to be a great time to be a rugby fan this year. So Rugby Merlin on YouTube. Check it out.
Amazing. Thank you so much again today. And for those at home, you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And do not forget to get out and play.